State fairs are the one place in America where a butter sculpture, a deep-fried stick of butter, and a man arguing with a goat can all exist within 30 feet of each other. And somehow, people still find things to complain about. Loudly, in writing, to management. So grab a lemonade because this is going to get weird fast. 1. Somewhere between the pig races and the pie tent, a woman marched up to the information booth and demanded to know why the animals were, quote, so loud. She was informed that pigs, being pigs, tend to make pig noises. She was not satisfied. She wanted them moved. To where? A quieter pig zone, a pig lounge, somewhere with better acoustics. The staffer just nodded slowly, the way you do when someone has fully checked out of reality. 2. Right in the shadow of the world's largest butter cow, a guy filed a complaint that the sculpture was, and I'm quoting here, misleading. He expected a real cow, made of butter. Somehow both alive and edible at the same time. When staff explained the concept of sculpture to a grown man in cargo shorts, he insisted that the sign should say fake cow, so nobody else got tricked. Sir, it's carved out of butter. What did you think was happening in there? 3. Over by the deep-fried everything stand, a customer demanded a refund because his deep-fried Oreo was, get this, too hot. It came out of a vat of oil at roughly the temperature of the sun. He bit into it immediately. He burned his tongue. And then he blamed the vendor for not warning him that hot food is hot. There was a warning sign. It said hot. He stood next to it while he complained. 4. Not far from the main entrance gate, a family lodged a formal complaint that the fair, the entire fair, smelled like a fair. Livestock, funnel cake, grease, sunscreen, sweat, and diesel from the ride generators. All of it. They wanted the smell reduced. They suggested air fresheners, outdoors, across 40 acres of open Midwest sky. The manager thanked them for the feedback and probably went to scream into a hay bale. 5. Halfway through the livestock judging pavilion, a tourist from out of state asked why the cows were, and again I'm quoting, just standing there. She thought they'd do tricks, like a rodeo or a circus. When told that dairy cattle are being judged on frame, udder shape, and body structure, she said that was, quote, the most boring thing she'd ever paid $5 to look at. Ma'am, you walked into a barn on purpose. 6. Deep inside the exhibition hall's quilting section, a woman screamed at a volunteer because her grandmother's quilt did not win first place. It hadn't been entered. Grandma had not submitted it. Grandma had not filled out the form. Grandma had, in fact, never even been to that state. But somehow the ribbon should have been hers by default, on principle, out of respect. The volunteer just kept blinking. What is there to even say to that? 7. Just past the bumper cars and the tilt-a-whirl, a father demanded that the ride operator turn down the ride because his teenage son felt sick. The ride was already at its lowest speed setting. It was, in fact, coasting to a stop. The kid had also eaten 3 corn dogs, a funnel cake, and something called a Krispy Kreme cheeseburger before boarding. The ride was not the problem. His stomach was. 8. Right at the edge of the petting zoo fence, a mother filed a complaint that the goats had, quote, tried to eat her purse. That is, in fact, exactly what goats do. It's their entire brand. There were signs. There were staff members repeating it out loud on a loop. The purse had a bag of trail mix inside it. The goat did what any self-respecting goat would do. The purse survived. The mother did not stop complaining. 9. About 20 feet from the Ferris wheel line, a man began yelling because the wheel stopped moving while he was at the top. That is how a Ferris wheel loads passengers. It stops. That is the entire mechanism. He accused the ride operator of holding him hostage for scenic views that he paid extra for. The operator kindly reminded him that he'd be back on the ground in about 90 seconds. 10. Somewhere near the giant pumpkin weigh-in, a spectator complained that the winning pumpkin at over 2,000 pounds was, quote, fake. It wasn't. State fair giant pumpkin competitions are one of the most scrutinized events at the whole fair. Judges check for holes, patches, hidden weights, and any sign of internal tampering. The pumpkin was real. It was just enormous. The man refused to believe it and left muttering about pumpkin fraud. 11. In the middle of the concert lawn seating, A couple wrote a full-page complaint that the country singer they paid to see sang, and this is a direct quote, "Too much country music. They wanted more variety." At a country concert. Headlined by a country artist. Advertised in a country music tent. They asked for a partial refund. They did not get one. They did get a very polite letter suggesting they read the schedule next time. 12. Right after the demolition derby ended, a woman marched to the ticket booth to complain that the cars got, in her words, way too damaged. That is the entire event. The name of the event describes what happens to the cars. She said it wasn't safe for the environment, at a state fair, where a man was, at that exact moment, deep frying a stick of butter on a plate made entirely of bacon. 13. Not 10 feet from the funnel cake truck, a tourist demanded a nutrition label on her elephant ear. She wanted calories, sodium, sugar, and a full ingredient list. On a piece of fried dough, the size of her head, buried in powdered sugar. The teenager working the window handed her a napkin and said, quote, "Ma'am, it's all bad." Honestly, that answer should be framed and hung in a museum somewhere. 14. Halfway down the Midway Carnival Games row, a dad filed a complaint that the basketball hoop was too small for the ball. It was. That is the game. That is exactly why it costs $5 a try. He wanted his money back on principle because he felt personally tricked by geometry. The game operator, a 17-year-old in a neon vest, just handed him a tiny stuffed frog and told him to walk away with his dignity. 15. Down at the far end of the sheep shearing demonstration, a woman burst into tears because the sheep looked, in her words, embarrassed. Sheep get sheared every year. It's how they don't die of heat stroke in July. The demonstrator explained this 3 separate times, calmly, while the sheep stood there chewing and looking very much fine. She left a 2-page complaint on paper napkins at guest services, signed with a heart. 16. Just outside the corn dog stand line, a customer demanded to know why the corn dog was, quote, "mostly hot dog." She thought it would be mostly corn. She'd never had one before. She was 52 years old. She lived in the Midwest. The vendor gently explained that the corn is the coating, the dog is the whole point, and no, they could not make a version that was mostly corn on a stick. She left offended. 17. About halfway through the tractor pull competition, a spectator complained that the tractors were, in his words, too loud for a family event. Tractor pulls are, by definition, an event where heavily modified engines scream at the sky until something breaks. That's the sport. That's what people paid to watch. He filed the complaint at a volume noticeably louder than the tractors. The irony was noted, but not commented on. 18. Right beside the giant slide attraction, a mother demanded that the slide be shortened because her son was, quote, "going too fast." That is the entire point of a slide. Gravity does the work. The slide had not changed since 1978. It has, statistically, hurt exactly no one. Her son, meanwhile, was already back in line for another go, waving at her like a maniac while she filled out a 2-sided complaint form. 19. Perched at the highest point of the Ferris wheel ride, a man complained that the view from the top was, and I swear this is real, not tall enough. He wanted to see the ocean, from Iowa. He was informed, politely, that the ocean is roughly 1,000 miles away, and that no Ferris wheel in human history could ever clear that particular sightline. He said the brochure lied. There was no brochure. 20. Just after the fireworks finale ended, a man filed a written complaint that the fireworks were, quote, "in the sky." He wanted them lower, where he could see them better, from his lawn chair, without tilting his head. Staff tried to explain that fireworks that low are called explosions and are frowned upon by every fire marshal in the country. He said he still wanted a refund. He did not get one. 21. Way over by the Arts and Crafts building, a woman filed a complaint that the winning oil painting was, quote, "too realistic." It was a portrait. That was the category. Realism won. She said it made her uncomfortable because the eyes followed her around the room. That's called good painting. The judges thanked her for her passionate feedback and quietly moved on with their day. 22. Right in front of the ice cream truck window, a customer demanded a refund because her scoop of vanilla was, and this is a quote, "too vanilla." She wanted more flavor, from vanilla. The teenager working the truck offered to add sprinkles for $1. She said sprinkles were, and I'm still quoting, not the point. Nobody at that truck knew what the point was, least of all her. 23. Somewhere near the beekeeping exhibit tent, a visitor complained that the live bees were, in his words, distracting from the honey display. The bees were the display. That was the whole exhibit. Bees making honey, live, in real time. He said they should be behind thicker glass, or, ideally, not there at all, at a beekeeping booth, where the beekeepers keep, famously, bees. 24. Just inside the main livestock barn entrance, a woman demanded that the cows be, quote, cleaner. They had just come in from a working farm, to be judged on being cows. She wanted them shampooed, blow-dried, and, her words, presented properly. Show cattle are, in fact, washed and groomed for competition. She said not enough. The farmer holding a lead rope stared at her for a full 10 seconds before saying, quote, ma'am. 25. Only halfway through the pie-eating contest, a father complained that his son was losing because the other kids were, and this is real, eating too fast. That is the contest. That is the only rule. Whoever eats the most pie the fastest wins. He wanted a slower division for kids who prefer to enjoy their pie. That's called dessert. His son finished third and cried about the ribbon anyway. 26. Right at the top of the water slide attraction, a teenager refused to go down because the slide was, in her words, too wet. It's a water slide. Water is the entire concept. The operator waited. The line grew. Her friends begged her. She eventually walked back down the stairs, past 40 annoyed people, and filed a complaint that the ride was, quote, poorly designed for people who don't like water. 27. About 3 feet from the funnel cake stand, a man asked for a funnel cake without the fried part. He wanted just the powdered sugar. On a plate. The vendor, to his credit, actually tried to accommodate this. He handed the man a paper plate with a small pile of powdered sugar on it. The man ate it with a spoon. He then complained that it wasn't filling. Sir, it's sugar. 28. Just before the sun went down completely, a mother filed a complaint that the fair was getting, quote, too dark. It was nighttime. That is how time works. She wanted more lighting installed across the entire fairgrounds. The fair had, at that point, more electric lights than a small city. She said it still felt dark in the shadows. Ma'am, that's what a shadow is. 29. Down by the smoked turkey leg stand, a customer complained that the turkey leg was, in her words, shaped like a leg. Turkey legs are, generally speaking, leg-shaped. That's where they come from. She wanted a boneless option, on a stick. That still looked like a turkey leg. Somehow. The vendor offered her a chicken sandwich. She left a 1-star review on 3 different platforms before making it back to her car. 30. Right after the pig races finished up, a man demanded to know which pig had, quote, thrown the race. He was convinced there had been gambling. There had not. It was pigs, running toward an Oreo. That is the entire event. He said the third pig, quote, didn't look like he was really trying. That pig was 2 years old. He does not care about your feelings. He cares about the Oreo. 31. Just past the ticket redemption counter, a woman lodged a complaint that her 300 arcade tickets only got her a plastic spider ring. That is how carnival prize redemption works. Everyone learns this lesson exactly once. It is a rite of passage. She said the exchange rate was, quote, insulting to working families. Ma'am, you spent $40 trying to win a stuffed banana. Nobody won anything today. 32. Not far from the fried Twinkie booth, a tourist demanded a gluten-free, deep-fried Twinkie. That's 4 separate problems in one sentence. The vendor, who was 17 and clearly done with this shift, said he could deep-fry an apple slice if she really wanted. She did not. She wanted the impossible Twinkie. She left believing the vendor was, quote, closed-minded about dietary needs. 33. Halfway through the magic show tent, a father stood up and yelled that the magician was, quote, using tricks. Yes, that is the job. That is the entire profession. The magician, mid-card trick, paused, thanked him for the observation, and asked the audience for a round of applause for the man who had just cracked the code of magic wide open. The kids loved it. The dad did not. 34. Right when the parade turned the corner, a spectator complained that the marching band was, in her words, playing music at a parade, loudly, in sync, while marching. She wanted a quieter parade, which at that point is just people walking down a street. She filed the complaint on a napkin that she then dropped in a puddle. That napkin is somewhere in a landfill now, still angry. 35. Somewhere near the giant vegetable competition, a visitor demanded to know why the biggest zucchini was, quote, so big. That's the competition. That is what everyone paid to see. Biggest vegetable wins. He said it made him uncomfortable, and this is the exact phrase, it wasn't natural. Neither is deep frying butter, sir. And yet here we are, standing next to a zucchini the size of a toddler. 36. About 4 steps from the cotton candy stand, a mother filed a complaint that the cotton candy was, quote, too sweet. It is sugar, spun into a cloud, on a paper cone. It has one ingredient. That ingredient is sugar. The vendor asked if she'd like to speak to a manager. She said yes. The manager was also 17. He agreed with the vendor. She left with the cotton candy anyway. 37. Deep within the antique tractor showcase, a man complained that the tractors were, in his words, too old. That was the category. Antique tractors. From before 1960, he wanted to see, quote, newer models. Those were in a different building, clearly labeled, on the map. He'd walked past it twice. He blamed the fair, then the map, then his wife, in that exact order. 38. Just outside the concert amphitheater gates, a woman demanded a refund because her seats were, quote, too close to the stage. She had paid extra for front row seats. She said she didn't realize front row meant near the front. The ticket said front row. 6 times. She said fine print. Ma'am, it was the entire ticket. It was in the largest font on the page. 39. Right by the fried cheese curds line, a father complained that the cheese curds were, in his words, hot on the inside. Melted cheese, when heated, gets hot. That is one of the very few things you can absolutely count on in this life. He burned the roof of his mouth. He blamed the vendor. He blamed the fair. He blamed, at one point, the state of Wisconsin. The Wisconsin cheese was not to blame. 40. Somewhere near the horse arena bleachers, a spectator filed a complaint that the horses had, quote, pooped during the show. Horses do this. They do it a lot. They do it whenever they feel like it. That's why the show ring has a cleanup crew standing by with shovels. He wanted an apology from the horse. The horse was not available for comment. The horse was already back in the barn eating hay. 41. Just past the caramel apple counter, a customer complained that the caramel apple was, in her words, too hard to bite. That is because it is an apple, coated in caramel, which hardens into a shell. That is the food. She wanted a soft caramel apple. That's just applesauce with syrup. The vendor did not point this out. He simply refunded her $3 and moved on with his life. 42. Way inside the country music tent, a man stood up and complained that the fiddle player was, quote, showing off. That's called playing the fiddle well. It's a skill. Fiddle players train their entire lives to be that fast. He said it was, quote, not respectful to the audience. The audience was cheering, loudly. He was the only one not clapping. He left during the encore, muttering. 43. About 20 feet inside the goat yoga tent, a woman filed a complaint that a goat had, quote, stepped on her mat. That's the class. That's why it's called goat yoga. Goats walk around on the mats. That's the entire selling point. She said she thought the goats would just watch, from a distance, politely, like little furry meditation coaches. Ma'am, they're goats. They don't do polite. 44. Only 3 feet from the giant Jenga display, a father complained that the giant Jenga tower was, quote, going to fall on his kid. That is the game. That is what Jenga does. It falls. That's the whole point of playing. He wanted the tower disassembled and reassembled shorter, in the middle of a tournament, during the championship round. Staff politely declined and offered him a coupon for a corn dog. 45. Just across from the funnel cake truck, a tourist demanded to know why the funnel cake was, and this is her exact phrase, shaped funny. It's made by pouring batter through a funnel into hot oil. The shape is a result of physics and gravity. It looks like a tangled mess of golden dough. That is what a funnel cake is. She said it should be round, like a pancake. It is not a pancake. 46. Right beside the demolition derby entrance, a woman filed a complaint that the drivers were, quote, being reckless. That is the entire sport. Reckless driving in a controlled arena. On purpose. For prize money. She said someone could get hurt. The drivers were wearing helmets, fire suits, and were strapped into roll cages. She was eating a corn dog with no shoes on. Priorities were interesting that day. 47. Only halfway through the barbershop quartet showcase, a spectator complained that the singers were, in her words, too in tune. She said it sounded, quote, fake. That's called harmony. That's what a quartet does. 4 voices, same key, blended perfectly. That's the entire art form. She said she preferred, and I quote, more realistic singing. Ma'am, you're at a barbershop quartet competition. This is as real as it gets. 48. Just outside the deep-fried pickle stand, a man complained that the pickle inside the batter was, quote, still a pickle. What did he think would happen? What was he expecting? A grape, a tiny steak, a different pickle. The vendor stood there in silence for a full 10 seconds. Then he said, quote, sir, the pickle is the point. That vendor deserves a raise, and possibly a medal. 49. Right at the entrance to the horse show ring, a mother filed a complaint that the horses were, quote, too tall for her daughter to pet. Full-grown horses are between 5 and 6 feet at the shoulder. They are, in fact, tall. That is how horses work. She wanted, quote, shorter horses. Those are called ponies. They were in the next building, clearly marked. She did not go find them. 50. About halfway through the strongman competition, a spectator complained that the athletes were, in his words, showing off their muscles. That is the competition. That is what a strongman event is. Big men lifting heavy things in front of a crowd. He said it was, quote, unfair to smaller guests. Nobody was making him lift anything. He was eating a turkey leg the entire time. 51. Deep in the middle of the corn maze attraction, a family got lost, panicked, and called the state police. Not the fair staff, who were 50 feet away. The state police. They were rescued in under 4 minutes by a teenage volunteer with a flashlight and a walkie-talkie. They still filed a complaint. The maze was, quote, too maze-like. That's the design specification. That is the only feature. 52. Just before the rodeo events started up, a woman demanded that the bull riders be, quote, gentler with the bulls. Bull riding is 8 seconds of holding on for dear life while a 2,000-pound animal tries to launch you into orbit. The bulls are, generally speaking, winning that exchange. Rodeo bulls are among the most pampered animals in professional sports. She left unconvinced. 53. About 2 feet from the snow cone cart, a child complained that the snow cone was, quote, melting. That is what snow cones do. In July. In direct sunlight. In a paper cup. It's flavored ice. Ice melts. This is one of the first things anyone ever learns about physics. The kid was 7. His father backed him up. The father was 40. He should have known better. 54. Right in the middle of the karaoke contest, a contestant complained that the microphone was, in his words, picking up his voice. That's the job of the microphone. That's why it exists. He said he could hear himself in the speakers and it was, quote, throwing him off. Sir, that's called karaoke. It's you. Singing. Amplified. The whole point is being heard. 55. Somewhere near the fried Oreo vendor, a woman demanded to know how many calories were in one deep-fried Oreo. The vendor said, quote, all of them. Ma'am, all of them. That is the correct answer. That is the only answer. Nobody has ever eaten a deep-fried Oreo and asked for a calorie count with good news in mind. She wrote a complaint. Someone at corporate laughed and filed it under obvious. 56. Right after the tractor pull ended, a man filed a complaint that the winning driver was, quote, too experienced. That's usually how you win things. Practice. skill, experience. He wanted a category for people who had never done it before. Those exist. They're called amateur classes. They were held earlier in the day. He missed them. He blamed the schedule. The schedule was on the fair website. It had been up for 4 months. 57. Just past the petting zoo exit gate, a mother complained that the hand sanitizer station was, quote, too far from the animals. It was 6 feet away. 6. That's the entire distance. She said it should be attached to the fence. Directly, next to every goat, the goats would eat it. That's the entire problem. Goats eat everything. That is their brand. 58. About halfway through the beauty pageant crowning, a father complained that his daughter did not win because the judges were, quote, biased. Every pageant father says this. It's practically a script at this point. She placed 4th. Out of 40? That's excellent. He wanted a recount. Pageants don't have recounts. There's no ballot. There are judges. They score. That's the process. He left threatening lawsuits. 59. Right at the top of the drop tower ride, a woman began screaming that she wanted to get off. That is the ride. That is what everyone on it is thinking. She'd waited 40 minutes in line to feel exactly that feeling. The ride lasted 12 more seconds. When she got off, she was smiling. Then she remembered to be angry. Then she filed a complaint about the ride doing exactly what it was advertised to do. 60. Just outside the bumper car's enclosure, a father complained that his son had been, quote, bumped. In the bumper cars, that is the entire ride. That is why it is called bumper cars. That's the name. The name tells you what happens. He said the other kids were being too aggressive. They were 8. It was a bumper car. Nobody was hurt. Nobody has ever been hurt. It's a bumper car. 61. About halfway down the food vendor row, a customer demanded a healthy option at a state fair, where the featured item that year was a deep-fried cheeseburger between 2 glazed donuts. He was pointed toward a corn on the cob stand. He said it had butter on it. He was pointed toward a fruit smoothie stand. He said it had sugar in it. Sir, you are at a fair. Go home. 62. Right beside the caricature artist stand, a woman filed a complaint that her caricature was, quote, unflattering. That's the art form. Caricatures exaggerate features on purpose. It's the entire concept. That's why they only cost $15 and take 4 minutes. She wanted a refund. The artist offered to redo it more flatteringly. She said no. She wanted the money back and the drawing. She got neither. 63. Just past the livestock auction pavilion, a tourist demanded to know why people were, quote, buying animals. It's a livestock auction. That's the entire event. Farmers buying and selling animals. Since roughly the invention of agriculture. She said it was, quote, upsetting to see. Ma'am, this is how food gets to your grocery store. The chain doesn't start in the freezer aisle. It starts here. 64. About 4 steps from the funnel cake truck, again because everything at a fair happens near the funnel cake truck, a man complained that there was, quote, powdered sugar on his shirt. He had just eaten a funnel cake, which is, by design, 90% powdered sugar. He wanted the fair to pay for dry cleaning. The vendor handed him a napkin and a look. He deserved both. 65. Right in the middle of the antique quilt display, a visitor filed a complaint that one of the quilts was, quote, older than her grandmother. That's why it was in the antique display. That's the whole exhibit. Old quilts. On purpose, preserved, historical, behind glass. She said it looked, quote, dusty. It was 120 years old. Give it some grace. It has earned the dust. 66. Only halfway through the fireworks show finale, a mother filed a complaint that her toddler was, quote, scared of the noise. Fireworks are essentially controlled explosions in the sky. They are loud on purpose. That is the entire product. She wanted, quote, quieter fireworks. Those exist. They're called sparklers. They were being sold at the entrance for $2. She did not want those. 67. Just outside the exit turnstiles, a family filed a complaint that the fair had been, quote, too much fair. Too many rides, too much food, too many animals, too many people. That's what a fair is. That's the entire concept. It's fair, concentrated, in one place. For 10 days a year, they said they wanted a, quote, smaller fair experience. Folks, that's a farmer's market. 68. Right after the parking lot cleared out, a man came back to file a complaint that his car smelled like, quote, fair. He had been at the fair for 9 hours. He had eaten 3 funnel cakes, 2 turkey legs, and a corn dog in the car on the way home. His shirt smelled like fair. His hair smelled like fair. His kids smelled like fair. His car was going to smell like fair for 3 weeks. That's the deal. 69. About 20 steps from her own front door, a woman called the fair the next morning to complain that she'd had, quote, too much fun. She had stayed too late. She had eaten too much. She had ridden too many rides. She'd woken up sore, sunburned, and full of regret and cotton candy. She wanted the fair to, quote, be more responsible about that in future. Ma'am, you did that to yourself, and you'll do it again next year. State fairs are basically America in miniature. Fried food, loud animals, big rides, bigger opinions, and at least one person yelling at a goat. Which complaint made you laugh the hardest? And honestly, be honest, have you ever been the person filing one? Drop it in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe for more. See you at the next one.